Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. I have been so excited about this conversation. I was on Carla and Sherry's podcast, The Love Fix, and loved my time with them. And so I wanted to have them on the Close the Chapter podcast. So I'm excited to first have Sherry Gaba. Did I say that correctly?
You sure did.
Okay. I always double check. Who is an LCSW, is a licensed psychotherapist, a life coach who helps people cope with codependency, addictions, trauma, and mental health issues. Sherry is a single mother, and once her daughter was old enough, Sherry returned to school, good for you, to receive her master's of social work from the University of Southern California. Now, this is where it gets super impressive. So everyone listen up. As a leading expert on addiction and recovery, Sherry's TV appearances include VH1 Celebrity Rehab. Want to know about that? CNN Inside Edition, The Robert Irvine Show, and Access Live, E! News, among others. She has been featured in Cosmopolitan, Women's World, the LA Times, Thrive Global, the New York Post, Marriage.com, and other leading publications. She has also been a guest on many SiriusXM radio shows. Sherry is the author of best-selling book Infinite Recovery, which addresses recovery from addiction and alcoholism through the lens of the law of attraction. Sherry is also the author of Love Smacked, in which Sherry addresses relationship addiction and codependency, and is a contributing writer to the book Chicken Soup for the Soul, Tough Times for Tough People. So impressive, Sherry.
Aww,
it continues.
Thank you.
And Sherry maintains a private practice in Westlake Village, California, is the editor of Recovery Today magazine and the founder of Wake Up Recovery, an online group coaching program that applies the principles of positive psychology, law of attraction, and mindfulness for codependents and addicts in recovery. Whoa, Sherry. That is so impressive.
Yeah, that is a lot. That's exactly right. The only thing I don't do anymore is run that magazine. That was a while ago. That was very exciting because we had some amazing people in the magazine like Jamie Lee Curtis and Russell Brand. It was a lot of fun. But I just, really wanted to focus on my clients and my online work and my book. So that's one element of that bio that I had to just make a little teeny correction.
And it still counts. So you're the former editor. And, the Wake Up Recovery is sort of, it's my online program, and we'll talk about that later, but it's really morphed into a program for love addiction, codependence, and toxic relationships. Started out with addiction, because that's really where it all started. When I worked at Celebrity Rehab, I worked at Promises Malibu, which was one of the first famous residential treatment centers where the celebrities went. But, and we can get into that later, I realized, oh my God, all I'm doing is focusing on the addict, my ex-husband, the addict, the alcoholic, instead of really talking about my story and the people that I help, which are mostly love addicts, codependents, and people in toxic relationships. That's so amazing. Would you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your story, like how you got into this work? It sounds like your husband, and then...
Not at all. I'm pretty open about it. And I think it helps people see that, they're not alone. It can happen to anybody. So it started out where I married an alcoholic. So I never really understood alcoholism, even though I'd gone to school and blah, blah, blah. But when you live in the tornado, it's very different than studying it in school. And then I got this job at Promises in Malibu. And then prior to that, I just went back to school to really help single moms, because that was my story. But it really morphed into this whole career with addiction, codependency. And I absolutely loved working at the rehab. I loved my stint on Celebrity Rehab. But I realized, we're always focusing on the addict and alcoholic. What about the family member? Or what about the woman who just keeps attracting, toxic people, or the man who attracts toxic people and narcissists? So I really kind of switched it all up. My story was that I'd been married multiple times. And that's what my book, Love Smack, talks about. I really wanted to take away the shame and the blame of being married multiple times and picking partners that really are a trauma response to our past, and to stop shaming and blaming ourselves and understand understanding at any age, you always get to start over and you can do the deep work. Like you do MDR, I do somatic experiencing and tapping and so forth. There's never a moment in time when you can't reframe, change everything up and do the deeper work.
Isn't that so freeing to know it's never too late? Because clients will come in and they're like, it's too late, or they'll have grief over waiting so long to do the work. I'm like, it's okay.
It is okay. Regretting, you're going to get to be that age anyway. So living in the regret is really not going to help you. I mean, I didn't really get all this till I was in my early 50s. And that was when I found a really great trauma therapist. And I really started understanding, the choices. After that last divorce from the alcoholic, I just said, I can't keep doing this. I have to change something. So it's been a great journey. And that's kind of more from helping single parents to helping codependent, toxic people in toxic relationships and addicts. And here I am on your podcast. Talking about it all.
And on celebrity rehab. I mean, that's not an easy feat.
No, that was a law of attraction thing. You remember the movie The Secret? That was out around 10, 12 years ago. And I had watched the first one and I said, I'm going to meet Dr. Drew Pinsky, who is a famous addictionologist. He's done a lot. He was very well known a little bit when they were always talking about the celebrities and addiction. He was always on TV about that, but some people don't know who he is. I was going to meet him. So I got on his radio show and we became great buds. And I said, look, you need a therapist for your next show. I'm sorry, but you need to have a therapist. You can't just have counselors and you need me. So that was kind of a thing that I put into the universe and it happened. I ended up being on 4 seasons and it was the most fun. It was just the most fun and helping people at the same time.
And look at you going, you need me. Like you need a therapist and I am the right person. That says a lot about the work you've done.
Yeah, that was even prior to doing the trauma work, I think. But I think I always did have confidence in my abilities. And, I've always been a go-getter. And that's one of the positive things about trauma is that when you've had trauma, sometimes if you harness it in a positive way towards achieving your goals and working hard and working up the ladder, whatever, going back to school as a single mother, that's the positive of trauma when you use that energy in a positive way. But it will turn on you if you don't balance it out and you don't work on it. And so I would say that as a trauma response to me saying, hey, you need me. It was sort of I know it sounds kind of funny as a trauma response.
No, it doesn't at all.
But I was always, a high achiever, type A kind of personality.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I've definitely slowed down. Now that I live at the beach part-time, I'm like slowing it down.
Good for you. That's when you're kind of in the centered, grounded space when you're slowing it down and can tolerate that.
Yes.
So, right?
Yes.
I mean, that's one of the things that we get so busy. So, because we don't want to look at or feel or all of the things or get our worth and value other places. And now you're slowing down going, this feels good. And
it's time to enjoy, I'm in my early 60s and this is it. Life is not a dress rehearsal. We got to really, and you can achieve any dream. You really, really can, just always have that saying, never give up. And if you can balance that out with really working on yourself, you can have anything that you desire.
I love that. When you say, you kind of alluded to that trauma will kind of come back to like it's going to manifest somehow. I'm using my own words. So let's talk about love addiction and how trauma kind of manifests love addiction. Yes.
So those who don't know what love addiction is, it's a process. You could call it a process addiction, a lifestyle addiction, a soft addiction. There's all kinds of labels, but it's not a substance abuse addiction, but it has the same mood altering activity that substances have. You get the same euphoric state, but you're addicted to love and romance instead of the drugs. It becomes that person's whole identity. And I know we'll be talking a little bit about codependency, and I might kind of weave it in here, but some people will say that sounds like codependency. Yes, codependency can be the same thing where you're obsessed with another person. However, codependency doesn't have to be a person. It can be obsessed with a lot of other things or trying to control, fix, or manipulate other things in your life. But love addiction is strictly a person. Like I was addicted to my ex-husband. I also was a codependent in the fact that I wanted to control and manipulate his using, but I was also addicted to the love. There is this real strong attachment. I don't know if this is theory, but in my opinion, I think most people that are love addicts a lot of times will have an anxious attachment style. They can also have an avoidant and go back and forth from avoidant to anxious. So a lot of people in the Instagram or on out there in the social media world are talking a lot about attachment style. So if you're someone with an anxious attachment, you may be a love addict, or if you're an avoidant, or maybe you're both. You get these pleasurable feelings from being in this relationship, just like a drug user craves his drugs, you're craving your love. The other aspects that sort of overlap codependency are you over adapt to what they want. So that could be love addiction or codependency. codependency. You lack boundaries, which can be codependency or love addiction. You have a fear of letting go. You have a fear of the unknown. You attempt to change others. You need others to feel whole. You look for others for affirmation and worth. You fear abandonment. That was my story from early childhood trauma. I had major abandonment wounds, which kept me always in a relationship, one after the other. One was over, I was into the next one. The other thing is withdrawal symptoms. So just like a drug addict has withdrawal symptoms when the drug is taken away, for a love addict, when the love object is taken away, you're going to have withdrawal symptoms. For a codependent, if you've been caregiving, taking care of somebody for a long time, fixing, controlling, obsessing, manipulating, you're also going to feel empty when that person is no longer in your life. So you keep people around to distract from what's going on inside of you. So you keep very busy, obsessing over others. And that's exactly what love addiction is. It's like obsessive love. And I think codependency is part of that.
Yes. So this obsessive love, I find with clients, they intellectually know like this isn't healthy, but they see the positive, right? But they can be so nice, but they can be, when they're not using or they apologize, a lot, they're sorry for what they've done and they say they're going to do better. How much does that impact them kind of continuing to stay in that love addiction cycle?
Well, it's huge. And that's where I think getting in with, they talk a lot about love addicts, codependents, attracting narcissists or toxic people. And I don't want to overuse the word narcissist here, but yeah, you end up being with someone who will love bomb you. And that means that's over the top attention. And you being the codependent love addict want that attention. All your validation is based on that attention. So this toxic person comes in and tells you how wonderful you are, gives you all this attention, dotes on you, or lies to you and says, well, in the moment, they don't think they're lying, but they'll say, yes, I will get sober. I will do that for you. I love you, and then they pull it away and you're just kind of hanging on to that original promise of hope, like with my ex-husband, I even got back with him after our divorce because of the promise he would get sober. That is how much the hook was. And we had what I would call a trauma bond, which is what a lot of love addicts have with their love object. And that is this bond that's based on some sort of trauma that's going on. In my case, with my alcoholic husband, it was the trauma of the sobriety and the using. And it was just this up and down, up and down, up and down. And you kind of get addicted to that cycle. Someone else can be addicted to someone who's abusive, not abusive, loving. So you have this trauma bond with that person. And that is what keeps people in that cycle, either the cycle of being in an abusive relationship or even the cycle of being with someone who is an addict or alcoholic, because you keep hoping, really hanging on to the hope.
And that bond is almost in your physiology. Would you say like people get so addicted to that, crave that feeling of being wanted and loved and needed?
They say it's more addictive than heroin. They say it can be more fatal than drugs because you'll do almost anything for that person. The extreme is the movie Fatal Attraction, where she was completely, and again, I'm aging myself, but Fatal Attraction was a classic movie where she's, Glenn Close is totally obsessed with Michael Douglas. And I mean, you go to the extremes because you have to remember the opposite of addiction, whether it's drugs or love, is a need for connection, a feeling of emptiness. And for me, my trauma was I was a preemie, I'm old. And in those days, they didn't allow mothers to hold their baby. So you know about this, Kristen, being a therapist. If you don't have that early bonding, attachment, nurturing, you are going to be set up for all kinds of problems. So I was really a love addict at the moment I came into the world because I was in an incubator for 3 months, fed through my feet, didn't have the bottle, and I didn't have my mother's touch for 3 months. So I was always craving that nurse to pick me up, which has really set me up for always wanting that love, always wanting that attention, but looking for it in all, as they say, in all the wrong places. But the truth is, it was craving a connection. So if you're someone out there and you're listening and you're like, oh God, that sounds like me, please don't beat yourself up. Please don't shame yourself. There's something that might have happened to you early on that is activating that trauma trigger for you. And that is why you're making these choices. And when I learned that, not to my early 50s, because trauma really wasn't, it was out there, we've been in this business for a long time and it was always maybe talked about more war veterans or tsunamis or earthquakes or divorce, blah, blah, blah. Now we really realize there's all kinds of trauma that comes in all different shapes and sizes. So that trauma is going to set you up for that abusive or love addicted or codependent relationship.
The fact that you figured out I was in the incubator for 3 months without touch, when did that come to the light? Like a lot of people sometimes don't realize that is an impact on them. How did you figure that out? They don't realize that.
Well, when I worked in addiction, I kept seeing this chronic emptiness, this chronic chronic feeling of being in the ethers of nothingness, needing something to fill them up. And I always felt the same way. I always felt like I'm just like you, only I'm not an addict, not an alcoholic, but I'm always needing something. So I realized, what is that something? And I knew there had to have been something to the fact that, I knew something about early bonding, and I guess when I took a class on somatic experiencing and later I got trained, it just came to life. Like I was doing a session with one of the therapists that was trained in somatic experiencing. And all of a sudden we're talking about my early trauma and being in an incubator, and I'm like, oh my God, that's it. That's it. And I almost, even though I couldn't remember in my brain, my body completely felt the abandonment. And it was as real. People go, oh, come on. Lots of people say, come on, that's ridiculous. You're just an infant. How could you know? Blah, blah. Well, it lives in your body. Trauma lives in our bodies. And until we release it, it's going to play havoc on our life. And so that's when I had the light bulb moment, and I wanted to learn everything I could about it. And I wanted to work in it with my clients. And I think there's just a lot of therapists that do a disservice who don't understand the trauma piece, and just can't tell you how many clients have come to me that, I've had therapy for years, but it's just been talk therapy. Nobody's really gone into that body and released that energy. And so someone like you who does EMDR, someone like me who does somatic experiencing, these are the things you want to look for, along with looking for a therapist, not a coach. Now, I do coaching as well, but you want a therapist that's going to help you with your trauma. There are zillions of coaches out there calling themselves trauma-informed coaches, and I don't care what they say. Don't hire them. They don't have the experience you and I have. I'm not saying that they aren't good at what they do in terms of being a coach, helping someone move forward in their life, but I don't believe they can help deep-rooted trauma. They certainly wouldn't have been able to help me.
Because you can't talk your way through it. That's the difference. It's living in the nervous system.
It's living in your nervous system. But you have to also have that family of origin background, understanding the roles people play in your family. You have to understand pathology. I'm just all about finding someone that really understands all of it. And again, there's nothing wrong with a coach. There's nothing wrong with talk therapy. But if you're really dealing with, let me just say this, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you're not getting results, as Einstein said, then you haven't found the right practitioner.
Did you, when you were on Celebrity Rehab and you were dealing with the addiction process and you're dealing with people stuck, because that's what people feel. They're like, I'm stuck. How did you work with them to help them get unstuck?
Luckily, I just started the training. I mean, I was just at the beginning of this journey for myself and learning about it. And I had a lot of mindfulness training. So I was able to work with them in a mindful way in terms of, what do you notice in your body? Let's get curious. Where do you feel it? Let's sit with that for a minute. Let's give it some space. Remember, I worked with Janice Dickinson, one of the first supermodels. And there's actually, I think you could probably find it on my website. I'm doing a session with her, and she had so much trauma. It was unbelievable. She'd had early abuse. I think it was sexual abuse. I also had Michael Lohan, Lindsay Lohan's dad. Same thing. He'd been beat by his dad, a lot of verbal, probably, and physical abuse. So those were celebrities that were really dealing with early trauma. Same with Jeff Conway. He was in the movie Grease. I don't always talk about this because it's been a few years, but these are on the air. So I'm not really breaking any confidence. These were experiences that were put on TV. So I want to share these to help you see that you're not alone, not to break confidentiality of any sort. But Jeff Conway had early trauma, sexual abuse. So these things don't go away. They come back to haunt you, and they will activate drug addiction, depression, anxiety, love addiction, codependency. It's a distraction from self. You don't want to be in that pain. You don't want to be in that moment of pain. You want to run from it. And so that's when you're going to run to other things.
The distraction from self and the pain. That is the essence of addiction. And that's the essence of codependency and love addiction too.
Right. Like, with the alcoholic, it was, you're the focus. I'm going to heal you. I'm going to fix you. I'm going to almost manipulate you to do it the way I want you to do it. And you absolutely have no power over that person. And you think you do, and you don't. And so the greatest freedom is when you let go and realize you don't have that power, and you need to stay on your side of the street, and they need to get on their side. And what I say, I see a lot of couples, like maybe before they're going to get married, and one of them is an addict. The woman comes in, it could be a man too, and she's all dreamy eyed. I love him, and he promises to get sober. And I always say to them, and I'm pretty tough, I'm like, that's great. And I hope he does. Just remember though, it's a one day at a time program. And even if you marry that person, there could be a relapse. So please do it with your eyes open. Because a lot of us, one of the hallmarks of codependency and love addiction is denial. oh, it won't happen to me. He'll never drink again. He'll never abuse me again, blah, 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 blah. And we have to get out of that denial.
That's such a powerful defense. Minimizing,
It's
rationalizing,
huge.
denial.
It's the first defense of any alcoholic or addict is I don't have a problem. Because if you have to admit it, same with a love addict. If I admit that there's a problem here, then I'm going to have to give up that person. You know, my mother was in a relationship with a narcissist, very toxic. I would call him definitely a sociopath con man. And she had just lost my dad. She was getting the beginnings of the dementia. And I mean, it didn't matter what we told her about this man. It just did not matter. She wasn't going to have it. She wasn't going to hear it. She was in complete denial. It was like talking to a wall. And he abused her for 3.5 years until we could get a restraining order on him. But that's how powerful it can be.
It is so powerful. And that's so hard. That's your mom. As a family member, you love her. You want to protect her. You want her to see the light. And I feel like people want so badly to help the person like you would your mom. Like you feel powerless.
Yeah, you do.
For them to recognize it.
Yeah, it was very sad, very difficult. And it wasn't just her that was getting abused. We were all getting abused by this monster, as I like to call him. So it affected our whole family. And then there had to be a court case. And it was a pretty traumatic thing. And it really, you know, I've been seeing a lot of things about narcissists. And then I realized, oh my God, this really is so real. Like, this isn't just a joke. I mean, narcissistic personality disorder and the abuse is a real thing. I think it's great today that everybody's talking about it. There's more education about it. Again, I will repeat, find the right practitioner if you are dealing with the aftermath of an abuse, because I had panic attacks and all kinds of experiences after he, you know, was out of the picture. There was all kinds of, you know, I mean, it was just so toxic.
Lingering effects that had.
Yeah, triggers, lots of triggers.
Yes. Describe narcissistic personality disorder, because that's an important part of love addiction and the addictive family system in general.
Yeah, I would say when an addict or alcoholic is in their disease and they're drinking, often they can have narcissistic traits because it's really all about them and it's all about but it's traits. Could be a personality disorder. What makes it a personality disorder is when they completely lack empathy, when they have absolutely no ability to see your point of view. And what I tell people is think of it as their brain is wired differently than your brain. Their brain does not have the capacity to understand your point of view. They always have to be right. They always blame you. They aren't able to look at their part. Why? Because their brain literally can only see themselves, the mirror of themselves. And that's really, but a lot of people that end up in these relationships are with people that have traits. They may not be full blown, but it really doesn't matter. You know, is this relationship toxic or not? I mean, some of the things you want to look for is, are you always ruminating and obsessing about this person? Are you always noticing subtle changes, waiting for the shoe to drop with that person? Are you walking on eggshells? Are there a lot of fights? Do you feel guilty for everything? Are they always blaming you for everything? Are you fighting all the time? Are they manipulating you, controlling you, telling you what to wear, telling you to go to work, not to go to work, you know, making all decisions for you? Are they yelling? Are they insulting you? Are they embarrassing you? Are they shaming you? Are they hurting you? Is there physical injuries? Are they actually physically hurting you? There's a lot of disrespect, a lot of devaluing, they'll discard you out of nowhere, a lot of dishonesty, a lot of betrayal. And the most important thing to think about with toxic people and yourself as possibly a codependent or love addict is you stop doing self-care. You just let go of all your physical, emotional, spiritual needs, all that. You just give it up. Stop caring about what you're eating. You stop exercising. You just, you know, they become everything to you and you give up everything. Friendships. That's one of the things you want to look at. And also boundaries. If you're with someone who's toxic and you try to set a boundary with them and they won't have it and they pout or they abuse you or they yell at you or they get upset, that's a really good chance you're with someone toxic.
This is an important conversation. I'm loving every second of it because I think it's so needed. One of the things I see, and I'd be curious to see your take on this, is people living in the fantasy of what they think a relationship is or who they think this person is. Like if this person is nice some of the time, I think this is true for a lot of people. They're like, I fell in love with that person. But the reality is that's not really who's in front of them.
Right. So they get addicted to the love bombing stage, which is that lavishing you with gifts, complimenting you, telling you you're the one, I love everything about you. So because crave that attention, you get literally addicted to the peptides of that stage of being really loving and then pulling it away. That becomes like I said, a trauma bond. So yeah, that is what is so enticing and very painful. when you realize, oh, this is a fantasy. That person is not that person who was love bombing you. That person, I mean, it's so scary when that happens. I mean, I was dating someone a while back. Oh, I'm going to marry you. Said it on the first date. Of course, I knew better. And then he literally a month later just was completely abusive, verbally and emotionally. And it was like, oh my God, what happened here? You're just taken off guard. So a lot of talk about red flags. One of the red flags is to really see about this love bombing phase. Are they just completely going over the top? Like just, it's just over the top. It's not slow and steady, it's like over the top. Look for that, because then you're probably with someone who's going to maybe eventually discard you.
I think that's so important for people to recognize, because that feels so good. That's why it's so intoxicating, because you're like, oh, they're really they want me. They're pursuing me. They think I'm important and I matter. And they miss, because they're in the fantasy of it, they miss some of these red flags that it's it's almost so much so soon.
Well, just to go a little deeper, if you're someone that had trauma growing up, and this can happen to anybody, you don't necessarily have to have trauma. You can get with a predator. Anyone can get with a predator. But if you grew up in a neglectful, abusive home and you felt very invisible and your needs weren't met, then there's this part of you that you don't know. And then they come in and then you second guess yourself. You kind of know that there's something not right, but then you kind of second guess yourself. That's because you don't have a sense of self, because nobody mirrored that sense of self for you. So that goes a little deeper into trauma work, but that's why you end up getting sucked in, because you really are you don't even know yourself. So if you don't really know yourself and you don't have an intimate, connected relationship with yourself, how can you really have one with someone else? So you're really attracted to what you think you need, what you didn't get, rather than being with a real adult.
And I look at it as developmental trauma. I
Yeah.
mean, right on that continuum. What I mean by that is what age did things happen to you? You mentioned infancy, and you're like, I came out of the womb, which makes so much sense. Not getting your needs met, not getting
it could happen at any time.
It can happen at any time.
It could happen if you were bullied. Like I've worked with people that were bullied, and all of a sudden they're attracting these people, and it's like they never got over the fact that they were being bullied. So they become people pleasers. They want everyone to like them because they were, people were really mean to them and beat them up and made fun of them. Let's say they were someone that were overweight and they were made fun of, and then suddenly, they go out into the world and they want everyone to like them. Well, that's a perfect person for a predator, a toxic person to take advantage of.
And that fawning response, that's what we kind of learned is the trauma term, is fawning. You want so desperately. It's like a desperation inside because you didn't get your needs met. Because something, traumatic happened and you didn't get soothed at that moment, acknowledged. You weren't able to process the body sensation, the feelings, the thoughts, and the emotions in real time. So it gets frozen in time.
And I would even venture to say there's also the flop response, which is another word I just heard about. I didn't even know about this. It's where you're in collapse. So you've met someone, you start out, you can even think of it as you go through the fight flight, you're all excited. Woo, I love this person, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you start getting disappointed, and then you kind of move. Well, first you're people pleasing. You want them to like you, and you're in the fawn response. And then they abuse you, then you're in the freeze response, and then you're really disappointed, and then you're kind of in the flop response where you kind of give up. You're just like, I just give up. Like, let's say you're with the alcoholic. I just give up. He's never going to get sober. And then you turn inward. You can start turning inward and blaming everything on yourself and thinking it's your fault. And, you can really go down the rabbit hole if you don't understand the way your nervous system works.
And it's so empowering to do this, knowing yourself. It is the most important work. If you're investing in all these other things in your life, like you think I'll get the plastic surgery, or I'll get this, or I'll get that, put it into this trauma work. That is the best investment. You'll change your whole system. And I keep telling people it's a ripple effect when you start doing the work. And I know it's scary for people because they're scared of change and they get riddled with fear.
Well, they don't want to give up the goodies, and everything, all things in life. Transformation is scary, but when you get to the edge of it, stick around, because when you get to the other side, it's pretty cool.
It's the most powerful work. Here are some of the things that I wanted to ask you too. What are some of the first steps to breaking free from love addiction, codependency?
Well, I think just being here on this interview is like one of the first steps, just having this awareness, like here we are, we're talking about it. Don't label yourself. Don't judge yourself. Maybe find a really great therapist that understands trauma, understands love addiction, understands codependency. Take the shift from the outside and focus inward, and know that every relationship in your life is really a manifestation. It's a mirror of the relationship that you have with yourself. So if you're attracting toxic people and you continue to nurture those kind of relationships, just start developing a better relationship relationship with yourself, one that is not toxic. Really look at the roots of where is this? What is this? What is the trauma that I might have gone through? Why do I keep picking different face, different name, same person? And like I said, building a connection with your healthy self. We need to sort of recondition ourselves and become addicted to our healthy self. And we all have an immensely valuable, colorful, vibrant, and strong sense of self. But definitely key things, find a great trauma therapist and join a support group. I have a support group called Wake Up Recovery. I don't know if you want me to talk about it now.
Yes, please. That's why I wanted to talk about support groups because I believe in them.
So maybe you can put the link in your show notes, but the link is for your listeners. It's $1 to join, and then it goes to $27 a month, and it's called wakeuprecovery.com/IG1. wakeuprecovery.com/IG1. It's an online group coaching program where I go live once a month. There's a bunch of modules on how to heal from toxic relationships, narcissistic abuse, love addiction, and codependency. I do use different principles from positive psychology, law of attraction, mindfulness, trauma. And it's just a great way, like if someone maybe can't afford therapy, or maybe they're in therapy, but they also want a support group of like-minded people that get where they've been. This is a great resource, and I offer it for very low price. And then the other thing they can do just to find out if they are a love addict or if they are, with a narcissist, take my quiz, grab my free ebook at sherrygaba.com/NP quiz, sherrygaba.com/NP quiz. I take the quiz, get my free ebook. And in general, Google my name. I'm pretty much everywhere. I have my book, Love Smacked. You can get that on Amazon, and I'm here to support you.
I think this has been the best conversation. I could keep going. I mean, I have like a 20 million more questions because I see this right now, even more since COVID, this idea of just codependency kind of growing because we've been in isolation. And when we're in isolation, that can be a place where we can feel stuck. It can mirror feelings of our childhood with these unmet needs.
Well, yeah. And then if if you're living in a home with somebody and you're working at home, and a lot of people are working at home now, there could be a lot of triggers that you need to work out being with that person all the time. It can replicate your family of origin. Maybe you never saw it before when they went to work, but now it's right there within your perimeters. And, yes, I'm busier than ever. I'm sure you are. A lot of mental illness, a lot of isolation. I think we're all guilty of isolating more. We could be the healthiest person in the world, and we're all kind of getting used to isolating. Like, I got rid of my office. I'm only working teletherapy. I don't know. It just works for me, but I think pandemic surely had a lot to do with that.
It did. It shifted so much. I know. And I feel myself going into a crowd and I'm like, I kind of want to go back home where it just can be peaceful.
A lot of people are saying that. So be easy, put your hand over your heart, recognize that feeling in your body. Oh God, there it is again. I'm around people. Okay. What do I need right now? How can I take care of myself in this crowd? And, you have the ability to soothe yourself. You just have to learn the tools. And that's part of the work I do. And I'm sure you do too.
It is the key work for me is inner child work. I did 2 episodes ago, and I just share the power of you nurturing the little soul inside of you that you know what they need. You know, and you can offer it even with such tenderness and nurturing and love. And when you do that, you can tolerate emotions.
Right.
You can tolerate it. And
you don't have to run from yourself.
Yes. Bingo. Okay. You don't have to run from yourself. On that note, that summarizes our conversation. Sherry, thank you so much. Everybody go take her quiz, join our support group if you're needing some extra support. And I thank you, Sherry, for your heart, your energy, and your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.